Welcome to Novel Navigator, where every story is an adventure waiting to unfold. If you're a fan of powerful plots, unforgettable characters, and immersive narration, you've just found your new favorite destination. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends and family. Your support helps keep these stories alive and growing. This is Novel Navigator, guiding you through worlds of imagination, one chapter at a time. Chapter 1. A New Beginning Year, 2194 Green Flame City, 42nd floor of Twilight Star Hotel. The luxurious hotel room exuded lavishness, with floor-to-ceiling windows providing a breathtaking view of Green Flame City. The dazzling lights of the metropolis twinkled below as the room's occupant, a man in a sharp suit, stood near the expansive window, his eyes fixed on the extravagant pool party unfolding beneath. The pool party celebrated the takeover of an heir to the Reaver Guild, now officially a super guild due to the addition of the heir in the immensely popular Vermorped Divine World. At the current time, Divine World had ensnared nearly 90% of the world population, leaving only the remaining 10% who couldn't afford a virtual helmet or cabin. Yet, despite the vibrant festivity below, the man near the window felt a palpable sense of isolation and abandonment. Former Vice Guild leader Su Feng, the Guild Board directors had already announced that you are to delete your game account in accordance with the contract. Of course, compensation will be paid out, as well as a mansion on the outskirts of the city. Consider this the generosity for your contribution to the Reaver Guild. The disembodied voice echoed through his smartwatch. Yet Su Feng's stoic expression remained unchanged. The guild's rise to super guild status owed much to his 2 decades of dedication. Hence, the board director's decision sought to erase him entirely from the game, preventing any chance of resurgence. They know if I retain my game account, they will be ruined. But then again, it was the naive decisions of my younger days. A hint of bitterness and regret colored Su Feng's gaze as he observed the lively pool party. Even if he deleted his game account and attempted a fresh start, climbing back up would be a futile endeavor. Turning away from the window, Su Feng admired the hotel room's lavish interior before deciding to rest on the comfortable bed. How long had it been since he could truly relax? The memories of the bloodshed and schemes in Divine World flooded his mind. Many friends were made, but they too abandoned him when he fell from the top. As he stared at the glamorous ceiling, Su Feng removed his suit and lay on the bed. Closing his eyes, he vowed never to repeat the same mistakes. If given a chance to redo his life choices, he would seize it without hesitation. Despite the boisterous pool party outside, Su Feng quickly succumbed to sleep. Beep, beep, beep. Amidst the great sleep, Su Feng was awoken by the sound of an alarm clock. What's going on? Confused, Su Feng rubbed his eyes slowly, his hands seemingly trying to reach for the alarm clock to stop the beeping sound. He was positive that he didn't set any alarm clock, so why was there even a beeping sound to begin with? After a few seconds, Su Feng found the alarm clock and stopped the beeping sound. He then tried to glance at his smartwatch to check on any updates. The smartwatch could contain lots of messages and emails. It had already become routine for him to always check on it whenever he woke up. However, Su Feng was astonished when the supposed smartwatch on his wrist was nowhere to be found. Moreover, that wasn't the only thing astonishing. He was in an unfamiliar, yet familiar place. Confusing, right? Why does this look like the dorm that I used to live in? Su Feng astonim once unfao. After all, this was the dorm that he had lived in during his school days before moving to a better neighborhood once he was recognized for his strategies and skills in Divine World. Was he dreaming at the moment? That was the only plausible explanation for how he had gone from a fancy hotel room to his dorm room. Or maybe it might have been his subconscious mind working and giving him such an illusion of being able to return to his past. How laughable. Su Feng smiled bitterly at such a scenery. If such an illusion was being shown to him, then it was quite clear that he had indeed been lying and deceiving himself. Who wouldn't be furious about being ousted after you worked hard and toiled your sweat to develop the guild? As Su Feng believed that he was merely dreaming or hallucinating, he heard a ding notification sound. His smartwatch was nowhere to be found, but Su Feng found his old phone that he had used in the past. Amused, he decided to let this illusion play out. Now that he had all the time in the world to waste after losing all of his position, Su Feng could afford to idle away. Once he grabbed his old phone and glanced at the notification, he smiled at the surreal situation. There was only a simple message, but it was this simple message that made Su Feng want to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Zhao Kai, Su Feng, where are you? The school competition is about to start. Zhao Kai was a friend of his and had joined the game, Divine World, with him. Yet for some reason, Zhao Kai suddenly disappeared from the game and even stopped contacting him. It was as if he had been disintegrated or snapped away from existence. So how could Su Feng not find this situation surreal? No matter how much time he attempted to contact Zhao Kai in the past, it would always go through voicemail. Nevertheless, it seemed like this illusion had read the regret in his mind. He had always wanted to investigate what happened to his friend, only to end up in a dead end every time. With the opportunity now arose for Su Feng to finally be able to contact Zhao Kai, he decided to mess with him. He was in an illusion, after all. His finger rapidly tapped on the screen and replied to Zhao Kai. The message was very simple. Su Feng, who are you? After sending that message, Su Feng felt energetic. Having been ghosted by this man and tried every method to search for him, it was about time he paid him back a little interest. I'm not a petty person, but you deserve this treatment. However, less than a few seconds after Su Feng had sent the text, Zhao Kai had responded, albeit vulgarly. Zhao Kai $. Hashtag, Zhao Kai. Are you joking with me? You dare to pretend to not know me now, huh? Zhao Kai. Su Feng, do you have no shame? Su Feng's brows twitched slightly at the speed at which Zhao Kai was texting. Isn't this illusion a little too real? Turning the phone to silent mode, Su Feng didn't plan on going into a texting warfare with Zhao Kai. He had only planned on venting a little of his frustration, and the goal was achieved already. Just as Su Feng was about to lay back down on his bed, mainly to wake up from this illusion, the door of his room door was barged open. Stunned, Su Feng turned his head slightly and saw a somewhat angry, bear-like human. That human was none other than Zhao Kai, and his face was beet red. Feng, how dare you pull a prank on me? Zhao Kai lifted his sleeves up, almost as if he was trying to mimic those third-rate villain actions you would find in the corner of a dirty street for a brawl. If he was still living in the past, then Su Feng might have reacted. But having lived through numerous obstacles that had shoved into his life, he was too lazy to even entertain such pointless action. This illusion of mine has already gone rogue. Su Feng no longer held any interest and wished to just wake up. Meanwhile, when Zhao Kai saw the lackluster reaction from Su Feng, he was thoroughly stunned. This phone is really trying to prank me this far, huh? Nodding his head, Zhao Kai rushed forward and grabbed Su Feng by the shoulders. He then proceeded to shout like an abandoned woman, Feng, even if you want to avoid the school competition, you are still obliged to attend. I don't care what kind of prank you are trying to pull, but you ain't escaping from me. Being grabbed by the shoulders suddenly, Su Feng had enough of this illusion. Enough of this nonsense. What school competition? I've long graduated from school, he retorted, feeling exhausted by the nonsense development. Even if he had been ousted, it still remained a fact that he once stood at nearly the top hierarchy with an abundant amount of influence among others. As if he would let this kind of illusion mess with his mind. Graduate from school? Feng, have you slept too much? We still have 2 years of semesters left. Zhao Kai's eyebrows were raised as he glanced at Su Feng with a skeptical expression. Look at the time already, Feng. We can't afford to waste any more time. Before Su Feng could even respond to him, Zhao Kai proceeded to shove his phone toward him, try to signal the urgency of the matter. When Su Feng glanced at the time, he was baffled. The time on the phone was listed as February 14th in the year 2174. Chapter 2. Preparation. A few minutes had passed since Su Feng took note of the date and time on Zhao Kai's phone. Initially, he disregarded it as a potential illusion of the past. However, the physical pain he experienced when Zhao Kai grabbed his shoulders was too intense to dismiss as mere illusion. To make matters more perplexing, Su Feng realized that several valuable items, including his smartwatch, were missing. Ignoring Zhao Kai and pushing his hands away, Su Feng stood up, determined to investigate his current situation. His actions left Zhao Kai bewildered. Is Feng finally losing his sanity to sleep? Zhao Kai wondered. The abnormal behavior and the altered aura of the current Su Feng were a stark contrast to Zhao Kai's memories of him. Meanwhile, Su Feng paid little to no attention to Zhao Kai's reaction as he walked around the dorm room. During the process, Su Feng even decided to pinch his hand as hard as possible, only to realize the simulation of the pain was indeed real. Have I really reincarnated to the past? Su Feng muttered, feeling excited yet anxious at the same time. Reincarnation. Everyone was somewhat familiar with this term, but for it to exist in reality was a different matter. Who doesn't wish to have a chance of reincarnation and redo all of their life choices? Hey Kai, can you come over here? Su Feng decided to put a theory to the test, hoping to confirm his deduction. Confused, Zhao Kai slowly walked towards Su Feng. However, once he got into a close vicinity, Su Feng suddenly threw a punch into his cheek, causing him to stumble backward. A bruise was subsequently visible on Zhao Kai's cheek. Meanwhile, Su Feng felt a slight tinge of pain from having to throw the punch, essentially confirming his theory. It's true. Feeling the tingling pain on his palm, Su Feng realized he had truly got back to the past. Of course, it might have still been far-fetched to decide the conclusion now, but Su Feng no longer cared. After all, he realized his vision was quite blurry, which indicated that he was no longer wearing contact lenses. Scrutinizing around for a bit, Su Feng soon found his old pair of glasses as he put them on. As for giving Zhao Kai a punch in the face, Su Feng was already being generous by throwing only one punch. After putting on the glasses, Su Feng walked toward a mirror as he glanced at his reflection. Looking at himself, Su Feng was somewhat bitter. The current him was tall and lean, with a relatively average build. His physical appearance contrasts with some others who may have more imposing or physically dominant traits. His brown hair was usually neatly combed, but due to waking up, the hairstyle at the moment was not particularly flashy and seemed to be in a mess. As for the rectangular shape of his glasses, it gave others a feeling of him being a nerd. Sigh, looks like I have a lot of work to do if I wish to regain my fit physique. With his current standard of perspective, Su Feng deemed himself below average. While Su Feng was disappointed at his physique, Zhao Kai, who was punched in the cheek, finally regained his composure. At first, he was completely dazed and bewildered by the unexpected punch. After all, he might be lamenting and complaining about Su Feng, but he never expected the latter would throw him a punch in retaliation. They were friends, and friends usually acted like this. What's wrong with you today, Feng? Calming his emotion, Zhao Kai was inspecting the man in front of him. He was acting way too weird. So weird that the bruise mark on his cheek did not matter at all. Nothing, I just felt like giving your face a punch. Su Feng answered, unwilling to give much context to the current ordeal. Something like reincarnation was merely a myth or a fictional event that everyone wished and dreamed of happening. Hence, if he started spouting nonsense like he had reincarnated, then there was a high chance that people might truly think he had gone insane. Hearing such an explanation, Zhao Kai breathed in and out, deciding not to argue with him at the moment. The school competition took priority first, so he could not afford to be idle anymore. Anyway, let's go and head to the school competition. Without even waiting for Su Feng's response, Zhao Kai grabbed his arm and started dragging him out. However, not even a second later, Su Feng brushed his hand away as he stood in place. Kai, the school competition, just forget it. If it was still the past, then he might have regarded the school competition as important. But with the Divine World being released tomorrow, he had no intention of wasting his time on a mere school competition. Once Divine World was released, everyone's focus would turn to the virtual world. Not even those big companies were able to resist the temptation of the Divine World. After all, it was not just a simple virtual game anymore, but it was a game that would redefine the world. Are you being serious right now, Feng? Startled, Zhao Kai was staring at Su Feng as if he had been possessed or not. Just a few days ago, Su Feng was blabbering about how he was going to be in the top 10. Yet now he was telling him to forget it? Was he playing with him? You can go ahead if you want, but leave me out. Su Feng knew it was impossible to convince him to give up on the school competition. Hence, he didn't bother to waste any talk with him as he turned to the left corner and proceeded to leave. Now that he had this kind of chance, he would not waste a single minute on trivial things like the school competition. He was going to prepare himself fully for the divine world, to take advantage of the information that only he had. The decision that I've made in the past was indeed a valuable lesson. Su Feng smirked coldly. Now that he had learned, he would never let anyone trample over him again. After leaving the school, Su Feng wasted no time in heading toward Shopping Street. There were two items that he needed to purchase: a virtual helmet and life water. A virtual helmet was obviously an item that allowed a player to connect to the virtual game world. As for life water, this was a grand invention that allowed a person to be mentally refreshed as well as improve physical condition. Normally, Su Feng would never buy a single life water because of the fraudulent price of even an inferior quality. However, that was the past mindset and not the current mindset. Having understood the true value of life water, he would be a fool to not purchase one when he could afford one. It was just a shame that his life savings could only allow him to buy two and a virtual helmet. Thanks for the purchase, customer. Your total comes to $5,700. The female worker behind the counter said sweetly, packaging the item neatly for him. Her action didn't surprise him one bit. Who wouldn't be so sweet when a wealthy customer had spent so much? With extreme heartache, Su Feng resolutely paid the price in full, instantly blowing all of his life savings. Of those included are his scholarship money. The virtual helmet cost $1,500, and each life water cost a whopping $2,100. If other students were to learn of how he managed to waste all of his life savings in one shopping spree, then they would have fainted on the spot. Having finished his shopping, Su Feng proceeded to return to his dorm and drank a life water. In just one gulp, the expensive life water was consumed. Nevertheless, a joyful expression could be seen on his face as the changes happened instantaneously. Phew, although my physical condition isn't considered ideal, it's still doable for now. As for my mind, I feel completely refreshed. Su Feng was glad that the money didn't go to waste. While Su Feng was satisfied with his changes in the school auditorium, a commotion was created. Never once did they expect a student to disqualify themselves by not showing up. This Su Feng is pretty arrogant. He actually dares to skip the school competition. What do you know? Su Feng knows his limit, so naturally, he chooses not to show up. Ha ha ha. Look, isn't that Zhao Kai over there? He's friends with Su Feng, but look at his ashen expression and bruised cheek. I bet he regrets being friends with him now. Feng, you really know how to cause trouble. Zhao Kai was flabbergasted that Su Feng really didn't show up. At first, he thought Su Feng was trolling with him, but who would have thought it wasn't? Chapter 3. Login Zhao Kai was currently in a somewhat miserable fate, having been unable to comprehend the illogical actions of Su Feng. Needless to say, everyone here who was a participant and eligible to partake in the school competition had shown up. Only a fool would skip it or even be late to it. Yet here we are, with someone having the confidence and nerve to skip it entirely, without a hint of regret too. When Zhao Kai recalled the determined expression and tone of Su Feng, even he was nearly convinced that the school competition was a trivial matter. Hell, look at that Zhao Kai. Does he still think he has a chance in this competition? Hey, don't talk him down too much. You'll hurt his tiny heart. Ha ha, you're right. My bad. Zhao Kai clenched his fist when he heard his fellow classmates' words. They were fellow classmates, yet their toxic mouths never shut. No wonder Feng doesn't care about the competition. Even if we win, it won't change the situation. Having such thoughts, Zhao Kai seemingly lost interest in the school competition as well. What was the worst that could happen? Reputation ruined? As if they had any good reputation to begin with. Just based on these toxic classmates, there was no point in proving anything to them. While he was having such a thought, Zhao Kai suddenly heard a ding sound. Taking his phone out, he read a simple text. Su Feng, if you ever change your mind, go buy a virtual helmet and ignore the school competition. Did he know I was going to give up from the start? Zhao Kai thought, but quickly shook his head. There was no way Su Feng knew he was going to change his mind. Dorm room 21. After sending Zhao Kai a text, Su Feng shut his phone as he began a simple set of exercises. Kai might still continue the competition, but it doesn't matter. Sooner or later, he will find how pointless it is. Su Feng never planned on having his text convince Zhao Kai. After all, before the surge of popularity, Divine World had taken the world by storm. Everyone's focus was on the school competition. Winning it would guarantee them a bright future in life. Hence, Su Feng didn't plan on wasting his energy and breath to convince him to do something else. Instead, he was more focused on himself and prepared for the launch of the Divine World. Back then, he was a newbie, having understood zero things, and eventually got conned into joining a black-hearted guild. But now that he had reincarnated, he was going to monopolize all the great things for himself. As for the rest, they could have the scrap leftovers. With that in mind, Su Feng continued his routine exercise, prompting him to be sweating quite a lot. He couldn't be considered fat, but it was indeed difficult for him to exercise for a long duration when he barely moved his body around. Nevertheless, Su Feng persisted and refused to give up. Others might not know about the Divine World, but he knew it was not just a simple game. Divine World optimization and immersion are on a whole new level. By the time those big conglomerates realized how big the Divine World was, they would already be behind. A day had subsequently passed, and Su Feng remained oblivious to the crowd outside the school. The students were celebrating their victory in the school competition. Gazing through the windows, Su Feng fixed the position of his glasses before taking a seat by his bed. His hand held the virtual helmet as he heaved a sigh of relief. It's time. With a determined look, Su Feng wore the virtual helmet and logged into the Divine World. Soon, the vision around Su Feng turned dark before a glow of light shone at the far end of a path. There wasn't a need to walk toward the end of the path because the light seemingly zoomed forward, nearly blinding him in the process. Having closed his eyes temporarily to avoid the blinding light, Su Feng slowly reopened them and was met with a system prompt. System: hello, brave adventurer. Welcome to the Divine World. To begin your very first step in the great Divine World, please choose the classes that you prefer the most. Looking at the system prompt, Su Feng was hit with a wave of nostalgia. How long had it been since he saw the starting screen? Nevertheless, Su Feng finished reading the system message, and a list of available classes was promptly shown to him. In total, there were 10 classes available for him to choose from, and each one of them was unique in their respective classes. Warrior, Gun Knight, Berserker, Knight Lancer Mage, Sorcerer, Summoner, Arcane Mage, Cleric Specialist. Gunner, Assassin, Swordsman warriors are frontline fighters known for their physical prowess and combat expertise. They excelled in close-quarters combat, wielding a variety of weapons and heavy armor for protection. Warriors play a crucial role in soaking up damage, leading charges, and disrupting enemy lines. Mages harness the arcane arts to cast powerful spells and manipulate magical energies. They are often characterized by their intelligence, casting abilities, and vulnerability in physical combat. Mages contribute to battles by dealing devastating damage, controlling the battlefield, or supporting allies with magical enhancements. Specialists are agile and skilled individuals who excel in specific combat styles or tactics. They often rely on finesse, precision, or specialized tools to outmaneuver opponents. Specialists play diverse roles in a group, ranging from stealthy infiltrators to ranged marksmen. Seeing the description of each class, Su Feng smiled lightly. Others might only think of these as basic classes, but not for him. Without hesitation, Su Feng chose the Cleric class, and a description of the class was given. System: Cleric's role blends divine magic with support abilities to aid allies in combat. Its attributes channel the power of deities for healing, protection, and light-based magic. Cleric's abilities heal wounds, provide buffs, and possess defensive spells, making them essential support figures in group battles. As expected, they don't bother to tell you that a class can be built differently. Su Feng was not surprised at the brief description of a Cleric class. System: Are you sure you wish to choose the Cleric class? Yes, Su Feng answered straightforwardly. His tone was filled with complete confidence. System, Clara class accepted. Please designate a name for yourself, brave adventurer, and your appearance for Divine World. Keep in mind that the adjustment of appearance is only possible up to 10%. For appearance, Su Feng decided to adjust it to the maximum percentage possible. After all, it was best to remain unknown to others when playing Divine World from the real world. As for the username, Su Feng didn't think much about it and simply used a different family name to replace Su. Lin Feng. There are a ton of Lin Feng out in the world anyway, and he was too lazy to think of a cool name. System, congrats on creating your character, Adventurer Lin Feng. Please select the birthplace that you want in the Red Sun Kingdom. It's finally here, the loophole that everyone failed to recognize until it was too late. Su Feng breathed heavily as he didn't choose a birthplace immediately. Instead, he glanced at the system prompt and asked, Almighty Being, I found my skills a bit too lackluster and not qualified yet to enter the Divine World. Please allow me to gain some experience to fully prepare myself for the upcoming adventure. Silence. The atmosphere turned silent right after Su Feng announced such an unusual request. Normally, players who joined the Divine World would be eager to hurriedly begin their adventures. They were afraid of missing out and allowing others to have a head start over them. But it was precisely because of this mindset that it caused many to be filled with bitter regret. Just because the system prompt tells you to choose your birthplace immediately does not mean you should follow and listen to it blindly. If others realized they had missed this golden opportunity, I wonder what kind of expression they would make. Su Feng mused, not feeling any bit of guilt for those rushers. Divine World was not just a simple game, and anyone who continued to mistakenly believe so would suffer. Patiently waiting by the side, Su Feng showed no sign of urgency or anxiousness on his face. He was like the calm wind, observing the atmosphere without planning on interfering. There was no need to rush things. Haste makes waste. Besides, Su Feng was confident that no one else would be doing the same thing as him. Chapter 4:4. Holy Sanctuary. A few minutes had passed by, and Su Feng was able to see a response from the system to his pleas. System, requests to gain some experience for the upcoming adventure have been approved. Adventurer Lin Feng. You shall be sent to the sanctuary. But remember, there is a time limit of 1 hour. Once the time limit is over, you shall be teleported to a random birthplace. Do you wish to proceed with it? Damn, sure enough, there isn't free lunch in this world. Su Feng twitched his brows slightly. Others might not worry about being randomly teleported to a birthplace, but not for him. A birthplace was essentially the starting location of their adventure, and, depending on the location, a lot of things could be changed. In other words, the system was warning him that he could gain some fruitful experience in the sanctuary, but there was no guarantee it would be successful. At the same time, it was stated that regardless of failure or success, he would be teleported randomly without his consent. It was a gamble, and the system was asking if he dared to accept such a gamble. Needlessly to say, Su Feng gritted his teeth as he accepted the condition. Since he had already gone to this point, it would be dumb of him to give it up. Whatever, the random birthplace is merely an inconvenience and not a real problem. Su Feng was not the stubborn type who didn't know how to adapt to a situation. System, Adventurer Lin Feng has accepted the condition. Transportation happening in 3 seconds. The moment the system prompt appeared, 3 seconds passed rather quickly, and Su Feng could see the ground beneath him forming a circle-type formation. The circle soon illuminated brightly, and Su Feng subsequently disappeared. A few seconds later, he reappeared in an unfamiliar place. Looking at the map in the system, Su Feng realized where he was. Holy Sanctuary System. You have been teleported to the Holy Sanctuary. Your time limit of 1 hour begins. Soon, a large timer appeared in the sky, and Su Feng understood once the timer reached 0, he would be teleported out of there without any delay. How is this possible? It's the Holy Sanctuary? Su Feng murmured in disbelief. The information that he had obtained back then was definitely not this. The player back then discovered this kind of method and widely boasted about it, because this worked only one time. Some didn't believe him and restarted their account to attempt it, only to be denied by the system. leaving many people frustrated. With this incident, it essentially verified the player's other statement of the location to be Sky Wind Empire. After all, the Sky Wind Empire was not just any simple empire. It had a unique aspect of letting players undergo a class change quest specializing in their empire. Players could only enter the Sky Wind Empire once they reached level 50, which is why when the person discovered this earlier, the players were still in their heyday of level 20-ish. Additionally, the player that claimed to arrive there and managed to complete his class change quest as level 1 shocked everyone senseless. No one doubted the player any further with such concrete evidence. Therefore, he was highly sought after by numerous big guilds, along with many wanting to purchase information about the class change quest. However, Su Feng was not a bit disappointed to see that he didn't teleport to the Sky Wind Empire. In fact, he was even more exhilarated to be teleported to the Holy Sanctuary instead. "Fortune is by my side," he exclaimed in joy. Holy Sanctuary. This was not a location that players could enter. Even back then, when those players were reaching close to the apex failed to find a clue linked to this place. He had anticipated the location to be Sky Wind Empire, but this surprise was more than welcome for sure. Only a fool would complain about this unexpected event. Whatever, no plan is absolute anyway. Although this was quite unexpected and kind of ruined his initial plan, Su Feng was not disheartened. What kind of unexpected scenarios had he not encountered in his past life? Well, the class change quest I plan on taking was just to make my path easier. But this is even better. Su Feng admired the sky and environment of the Holy Sanctuary. The architecture of the Holy Sanctuary was grand and majestic. Tall, ivory-colored spires reached toward the virtual sky, adorned with intricate carvings depicting celestial beings and sacred symbols. The sanctuary featured lush gardens with vibrant flowers and exotic plants. These sacred gardens are meticulously arranged, creating a serene environment. At the heart of the sanctuary, a fountain of purity flowed with crystalline water. The fountain symbolized cleansing and rejuvenation, offering buffs to players who come to bathe in its divine waters, enhancing their spiritual connection. It was no exaggeration for this location to be called the Holy Sanctuary. Just by being here, Su Feng could feel a vast amount of mana surrounding the atmosphere and buffing him. These buffs were just the passiveness of the Holy Sanctuary. Su Feng truly wanted to admire the scenery more, but with the time limit ticking down, he could only stop himself from sightseeing. Let's check the map on the location of that baptism. Su Feng opened his mini-map and began scrutinizing each area. Currently, he was dressed in the beginner equipment of a cleric, but none of that mattered. After all, the so-called training was never meant to fight monsters to begin with. Instead, it was supposed to be an early exploration for them in a city. Whether they gained an opportunity or not depended on the player itself. And in his past life, that player was indeed lucky enough to undergo a class change. Nevertheless, Su Feng knew he was definitely more lucky than that player. Walking around the streets, Su Feng was heading toward the famous baptism area, which only a small number of players were ever able to get into. As he was walking, he noticed many NPCs giving him some glances, given his equipment was beyond the term shabby. Luckily, though, the NPC at the current stage had not gained much intelligence yet. They could still interact normally, but they aren't lifelike enough yet until the Divine World system undergoes another update. After a while, Su Feng stopped at a building that was similar to a large coliseum. His hands were visibly trembling slightly, not from nervousness or anxiety, but from excitement. Chapter 5:5. Guardian of the Sanctuary in the heart of the Holy Sanctuary, Su Feng stood before the grand Colosseum-like structure where the crazed and rumored sacred baptism would take place. The building's architectural magnificence reflected the divine nature of the ritual about to unfold. As he entered the Colosseum, Su Feng marveled at the interior, adorned with intricate patterns and radiant symbols. A sense of anticipation and reverence filled the air. The Colosseum's design seemed to channel the divine energy that permeated the Holy Sanctuary. At the center of the Colosseum stood the baptismal altar, a platform bathed in a soft, celestial glow. This was the focal point of the sacred ritual, and only a select few players had ever set foot on this hallowed ground. With each step forward, Su Feng felt a surge of mana coursing through him, resonating with the divine energy of the holy sanctuary. The buffs from the sanctuary enhanced his senses and awareness, preparing him for the transformative experience that awaited. It really isn't an exaggeration when those players said they wished they could remain here forever. Su Feng felt like he was connected with every fiber of his muscles, allowing him to transcend beyond the mortal bound. As Su Feng approached the baptismal altar, an NPC clad in ethereal robes appeared. This NPC, known as the Guardian of the Sanctuary, exuded a dignified aura. Their eyes gleamed with otherworldly wisdom, and a sense of purpose radiated from their being. Although there wasn't any hostility, Su Feng was suffocating from the pressure the Guardian emitted. "What is the reason for your appearance here, adventurer?" The Guardian of the Sanctuary asked in a somewhat autonomous tone. "Greetings, respectable Guardian of the Sanctuary. I wish to be baptized by the baptismal Atler." Su Feng bowed his head slightly and said respectfully. He dared not to show any hint of disrespect toward the Guardian. The Guardian in front of him could easily swat him away like a fly. The NPCs might not have much intelligence early on, but they could still discern hostile and non-hostile entities. And if they felt threatened or disgusted, then they would act upon such desire and make a move. The players in the past were ignorant of this and decided to troll around, only to end up regretting their actions. Being killed by an NPC was anything but fun, especially when the NPC were nobles or held a certain reputation in the area. Losing experience and dropping a level was considered a blessing. The worst-case scenario was to be thrown in prison based in real time, essentially crippling them from being able to game for that certain amount of time. The Guardian here was not only a noble, but also held a high reputation. Thus, Su Feng had to put on his most respectful and solemn expression. The baptismal Atler is off-limits to outsiders. The Guardian of the Sanctuary responded. But before Su Feng could be despaired or disheartened at the response, the Guardian of the Sanctuary continued his words. "However, seeing how you have the permission of the Divine God, you are permitted to enter for 10 minutes only." The Divine God that was spoken about was referred to as the system that the players knew. To players, the system was the interface and the main connection for them to be in the divine world. However, to the NPC, it was the Divine God, a domineering figure that managed the world they were in. "Thank you for your generosity." Su Feng quickly gave his thanks. He was truly gambling on whether or not he was able to be baptized, given that it would have given him a tremendous boost, a boost even better than a class change. Thus, he was inwardly exhilarated that he was actually able to do so. "I truly have to thank that idiotic bragging player for sharing such precious information. Otherwise, I wouldn't have such an advantage." Su Feng once again praised that player for their great generosity. If that player had known this event would occur, then he would have definitely beaten the crap out of himself for bragging so much. Alas, it was a little too late, and Su Feng was going to reap all the benefits for himself. Having gained permission to enter, the Guardian of the Sanctuary sidestepped a bit to make way for him. Remember, the time limit is 10 minutes. If you're not out by then, there will be punishment. The Guardian warned. Su Feng nodded his head. He would definitely keep that in mind and ensure that he would be out by then. As for trying to test the Guardian's patience and staying longer than 10 minutes, an amateur might do it, but definitely not him. Walking toward the secretive area, Su Feng was greeted by a large pool filled with glistening crystal water. Naturally, the liquid in the pool was anything but simple. Although he had never experienced what baptism was, he knew this glistening crystal water was able to awaken his potential to an unimaginable height. Taking a step forward, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It wasn't because of nervousness, but because of excitement. I've always been envious of those lucky bastards, but who would have thought I would become those lucky bastards one day? He mumbled, trembling in place. As much as he wanted to jump straight into the pool and enjoy the baptism, Su Feng knew it couldn't be that simple. After all, there was quite a bit of information regarding the pool and the baptismal altar in the past. The time needed to be baptized varied from person to person. Some could be easily done in a matter of seconds, whereas some would be done in minutes. The crux of the matter was how willing the person was going to go, meaning he needed to embrace all the pain without cowering to restructure his body. Overall, it depended on the will of the person to be baptized. Breathing deeply, Su Feng soon controlled his breathing, immersing himself to become one with nature. His eyes remained closed for a few seconds, and by the time he reopened them, there was only calmness and determination in them. "Let's do this," he uttered, diving into the pool without any hesitation. Chapter 6. Baptism after diving into the pool. The first thing Su Feng felt was a cold sensation erupting throughout his body. It was as if he had gotten frostbite, but even that was an understatement to his current situation. The icy chill of the water seeped into every pore of Su Feng's being, sending shivers racing down his spine. He had expected the baptism to be intense, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer magnitude of the sensation coursing through him. Damn, those people really aren't exaggerating about this baptism being the same as undergoing hell. As he submerged himself deeper, the frigid water seemed to envelop him in its embrace, pulling him into a realm of pure elemental energy. His senses heightened, and Su Feng could feel every molecule of water swirling around him, each carrying a potent charge of divine power. With each passing moment, the cold became more intense, bordering on unbearable. Yet, despite the discomfort, Su Feng remained resolute. He knew that this was a trial he had to endure if he wished to unlock his true potential. This little bit of pain is nothing. He gnashed his teeth, clenched his fist tightly, and continued to endure. As the seconds ticked by, Su Feng's vision began to blur, the edges of his consciousness fading into darkness. Soon, he felt as if the world was threatening to consume him, but he fought against it with every fiber of his being, clinging to the hope that this ordeal would soon be over. Just when he thought he could bear no more, a surge of warmth washed over him, cutting through the icy veil that had enveloped him. It was a sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced, a pure and radiant energy that filled him with renewed strength and vitality. Su Feng was astonished inwardly at the sharp change. With a gasp, Su Feng broke the surface of the water, his chest heaving as he gulped in lungfuls of air. He had emerged from the baptismal pool reborn, his body pulsing with newfound power and purpose. As he stepped out of the pool and onto the sacred ground of the baptismal altar, Su Feng felt a sense of clarity wash over him. He had undergone a transformation, both physically and spiritually, and he knew that he was no longer the same person who had entered the sanctuary mere moments ago. "I feel like I'm a part of this world now," Su Feng murmured, having felt his connection with the divine world had increased tremendously. No wonder those who manage to baptize themselves are so powerful and have such quick reactions. The difference is like heaven and earth. Back then, he had scoffed at them and was even somewhat envious of these lucky individuals. After all, who didn't want to become stronger in the divine world whose influence would soon affect their real world? The stronger an individual is in the game, the more influence and power they will gain in the real world. He had attempted to reach such a stage in the past as well, but he was just lacking that little bit. It was merely that little bit of obstacle he needed to overcome, yet that little bit seemed more massive than the largest mountain. "Adventurer, your time is nearly up. Please evacuate the area in due time, otherwise there will be punishment." Su Feng snapped out of his daze when he heard the guardian giving him a warning. It didn't feel like many minutes had gone by. Despite the confusion about how he nearly reached the time limit, Su Feng quickly tidied his clothes. Due to the magical effect of the seemingly ordinary water, his clothes were completely dry, almost as if they had never been soaked before. Not trying to test his luck any further, he exited the area and was greeted by the sight of the guardian. The guardian merely gave a glance at Su Feng before nodding its head. It was clear that the guardian didn't care whether or not Su Feng had succeeded in the baptism. The only thing it cared about was the time limit not being crossed. Nevertheless, Su Feng still gave his thanks with the utmost respect. "Thank you for the opportunity," guardian of the sanctuary," he calmly said and left in a smooth manner. As soon as he exited the building, Su Feng could finally breathe a sigh of relief. It was indeed nerve-wracking to be in the presence of such a formidable being as a mere newbie. There's less than half an hour, staring at the timer in the sky. Su Feng didn't realize how much time he had lost for this baptism. Although regrettable that he failed to capitalize on the time to its best value, he was still grateful for the opportunity. Being thrown into an unexpected location, it was difficult to plan what to do on the spot. Hence, Su Feng started pondering over what kind of benefits he could gain in the holy sanctuary. Information revolving around the holy sanctuary was limited, and most of the players were a stingy bunch that kept any critical information to themselves. Had it not been for some who simply wished to be noticed and gain fame, then he would have been clueless about the baptism. Wait a minute, there should be quite a lot of magical herbs in this sanctuary. If I can snatch some of them, then I can easily concoct a few rare potions. Almost like a bolt of lightning had struck him, Su Feng suddenly thought about the possibility of stealing some rare magical herbs. Normally, the rare magical herbs could only be seen in the latter stages of the game. Therefore, the potions that could be concocted in the early stage of the game were considered irrelevant. After all, they were low-level potions with minimal effects. Potions that could buff a player's stat were practically non-existent. It's time to milk those rich players dry. A creepy smile appeared on Su Feng's face as he lifted his glasses up a little bit, causing a sharp glint to reflect on the lens. Chapter 7:7. Deceive with the goal of getting the rare magical herbs available in the holy sanctuary to produce some rare and high-quality potions. Su Feng quickly got to work. The NPCs on the street might be robotic and seem unalive, but Su Feng was able to communicate with them in a roundabout manner. He would first greet them politely and talk amicably, being overly friendly. The responses he got were some fixed dialogues, but with his careful words of choice, Su Feng managed to piece each clue bit by bit to get the information he wanted. In the end, he spent nearly another 10 minutes to finally pinpoint a location that houses multiple rare magical herbs. The location was unsurprisingly and unoriginally called Miracle Herb Garden. The patrol guards of the Miracle Herb Garden might not be at the level of the Guardian of the Sanctuary, but with my current attributes, it's impossible to confront them directly. Su Feng cursed silently in his mind. Why must there be guards in the garden? The garden merely had some herbs, and they should have just left those poor herbs alone. How insecure must these people be to assign guards for the garden? They're so despicable and overly paranoid. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Su Feng decided to inspect the patrol guards closely. He was going to analyze the situation first, and if deemed impossible, then he could only give up. Just the fact that he was able to be baptized had already benefited him far beyond his original goal anyway. Standing across the Miracle Herb Garden, Su Feng watched as the NPCs repeatedly walked past the area. Throughout this time, the patrolling guard showed no reaction and remained in their station. A few more minutes passed by, and Su Feng was astonished to see the patrolling guard suddenly show some reaction. It was toward an NPC dressed in more fancy clothing compared to the others, almost as if they were trying to show their respect. Interesting, he murmured, rubbing his chin at this development. Glancing back at the sky to check on the time, Su Feng realized he had wasted 10 minutes or so inspecting. Whatever, it's worth the risk. He'll be kicked out of here anyway once the time limit is done. I might as well risk it for the biscuit. Determined, Su Feng tidied his clothes a bit, and as much as he wished to get fancier clothes similar to the ones that the patrolling guard had shown respect for, time was against him. Not to mention, he doubted he would even have the money to afford such clothes. Exuding an air of confidence and demeanor akin to a noble, Su Feng proudly walked toward the Miracle Herb Garden's perimeter. Halt! This is private property, and no one is allowed inside without permission. One of the patrolling guards spotted Su Feng and warned in their usual tone, filled with zero emotion that resembled a real human. Their weapons were extended forward, hinting that it would turn violent soon if he didn't retreat. Nevertheless, Su Feng kept his calm, and in fact began sneering coldly. Oomph. A mere patrol guard dare to stop me? Su Feng glared at the patrolling guard in disdain. The guardian of the sanctuary has bestowed me permission to enter here and grab a few herbs after successfully being baptized. And yet here you are, halting me from my path. Are you trying to hinder my growth and prevent me from being a force to the holy sanctuary? The patrolling guard was stunned briefly and seemed confused by the outburst from Su Feng. It seemed as if the patrolling guard was trying to ponder over the information. But how could Su Feng allow him? In a bluff, it was best to act dominantly and confidently. However, the main aspect that most forgets about is to give your opponent zero time to think. Otherwise, the bluff would easily shatter as more time goes by. What? You don't believe me, huh? Su Feng continued to act haughtily and spread his arms wide. Use your eyes and look at me. Do you not see my baptized state, or do you think I'm daring enough to use the name, the guardian of the sanctuary, to deceive others? Although still suspicious of Su Feng's claim, the patrolling guard indeed squinted its eyes and inspected him more thoroughly. A few seconds later, the patrolling guard was astonished to see the baptized state from Su Feng. Hesitation soon appeared on its expression, seemingly unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, Su Feng was starting to curse silently in his mind. Damn, baptizing is a sacred and rare thing to achieve. There shouldn't be any problem with it. He was hoping his arrogant demeanor and the fact that he was baptized would quickly bypass the guard to avoid giving them the chance to verify the information. After all, his lies would instantly be exposed if someone went ahead to check. The situation was getting tense and awkward, with the patrolling guard standing still like a statue. Ugh, no other choice. Su Feng exclaimed inwardly. With a snort, he stepped forward and shouted at the guard, I don't care if you refuse to believe me, but my time is running out. They'll be heading inside to grab the herbs, and you can use that time to verify my information. I'm sure you would have no problem with it, given that it'll be right here when you return. His suggestion was equivalent to saying he would be in a house arrest, and they could always detain him if he were caught lying. However, if he was indeed speaking the truth, then there was no harm in letting him enter early to retrieve the herbs he was bestowed upon. Very well. You shall enter, but not allowed to leave until we verify your statement. The patrolling guard spoke emotionlessly. Ha ha ha, success. Su Feng was laughing with joy from the inside, but kept his cool on the surface, merely nodding his head in response. Chapter 8. Robbing Miracle Her Garden. Having successfully bluffed his way inside and giving the patrolling guard a reason to let him enter early, Su Feng was kindly escorted by the other guards. The herb garden is immensely precious, so you're only allowed to take what you're bestowed with. If you take something you're not supposed to have, then there will be punishment. Is that clear? One of the guards warned severely. Despite the tone usage, Su Feng doubted it was the guard's true emotion and more of a programming code. After all, the body posture and fluctuation of emotion didn't match the guard's tone usage. Previously, when he was pretending to be an arrogant person, he made sure his body posture and emotions matched the arrogant tone. Of course, the guards most likely didn't care about his efforts in acting, but that didn't mean he would do it half-heartedly. If you're going to do something, then either give it your all or don't do it at all. That was Su Feng's motto. Rest assured, I'm not ignorant enough to ignore the rules of the Miracle Herb Garden. Su Feng calmly responded. Inwardly, though, he was snickering at them since he was a fake from the get-go. Take what you're bestowed with. What a joke that was. He was never bestowed with anything, and he calculated the time needed and the time he might be exposed already. Therefore, the moment he finished robbing the necessary herbs, the guard should have already realized he was deceiving them all along. However, by then, he would already be kicked out from the holy sanctuary automatically by the system. While stand guard outside, since more people inside the garden would harm the environment. The guard said before taking their stance right by the entrance of the garden. Humph, you speak as if we're polluting the garden. Su Feng sneered and entered the garden. Simultaneously, he was thanking and praising these guards for being so generous. By standing outside the entrance, it meant that he wouldn't be scrutinized by them when he tried to take some herbs, saving him from giving an explanation. Just how generous could these guards get? My bad luck seemed to be turning for the better. Tears of joy would have been gushing out of his eyes if he hadn't controlled his emotions properly. Although overly excited and jubilated, they were all concealed in his mind. On the surface, his facial expression had never changed, much less shown any emotion. This was something that he had gained from being at the management level in his past. If others tried to replicate this, it would be difficult unless they had gone through the same or similar obstacles and journey that he did. Turning around, Su Feng determined their line of sight was limited, so by going to the sides, they wouldn't be able to spy on him. And as much as he wanted to close the door, Su Feng rejected that thought because it would raise the guards' suspicions and their vigilance. Taking a right turn, Su Feng's eyes glistened and sparkled. The sight of numerous rare and unique herbs lay in front of him. If I don't bring these home with me, then it'll truly be a sin, he murmured, keeping his pace steady and calm. The guards might not be able to see him, but their ears could still detect his footsteps. If he was to become agitated and tried to rush ahead, then it would be the same as alerting them. Only by being calm and collected, along with steady movement, would the guards lower their doubts on him further. This was the benefit of having experienced the might of these NPC guards in the past. Others could only blame themselves and make this mistake themselves to find out. Arriving near a herb, Su Feng smiled in joy. Sunfire Lotus, an amazing herb that grants fire resistance and enhances physical strength. So long as I synthesize this, I'll be able to take in a large amount of money. Opening his inventory and practically emptying most of the Sunfire Lotus, Su Feng proceeded on his next conquest. Starlight Blossom, Moonshadow Fern, Frostvine Orchid, and numerous more herbs were rapidly vanishing from the Miracle Herb Garden at an astonishing rate. All of the herbs had finally found their true home, his inventory space. It was a good thing that the same herb type could be compiled together as one inventory space. Otherwise, Su Feng would be crying in pain for not being able to rob all of them. As time slowly passed by, the guards outside were getting oddly suspicious. Alas, thanks to the game still being in the early stages, the guard didn't attempt much action and remained in their position. After some time more had passed by, and nearly 70% of the herbs were robbed clean by Su Feng, leaving only the center 30% untouched. The center herbs are rare, but not as precious. Also, the guard would definitely react if they personally saw me snatching all of them. Su Feng thought to himself. He was greedy, but not greedy to the point of not knowing his limit. Clasping his hands, Su Feng realized he had actually become fatigued from picking up all the herbs. Due to the environmental effects of the garden, Su Feng was capable of picking them up without any side effects and had gone overboard. After all, herbs like these are normally found in the wild, and they're not easy to harvest. Either high-level monsters were guarding the herbs, or it was the environment affecting the players. Calculating by the time, Su Feng knew he had around a few minutes left before being kicked out. However, right when he was calculating silently, Su Feng and the guards heard an angry shout from afar. That person was lying. Capture him at all costs, guards. Damn, talk about arriving not too fast and not too late. What is this crap? Su Feng clicked his tongue and quickly dashed toward the entrance. Initially, the guards outside were dumbfounded by his action, but soon they realized Su Feng wasn't surrendering. Have fun waiting outside. Su Feng smiled gently and fluently shut the door, almost as if this wasn't his first rodeo. Chapter 9. Cowardly and timid, closing the door tightly. Su Feng smiled bitterly as he wondered if someone was toying with him. Like why? There was probably only a minute left till he would be kicked out. So, just why would the guards verify the information he was lying at this moment? Couldn't they have waited until he was kicked out first? Ugh. Maybe this is the divine world system playing a horrible joke on me, or a punishment for trying to cheat and get a head start. Su Feng scratched his head as he pondered over the timing of such a coincidence. Alas, he could barely get any time to ponder things over with the constant banging sound of the door outside. Despicable liar. Open the door, or else your punishment would be even more severe. The guards outside shouted in fury. So now you all decided to act human-like and wanted to see me back. Su Feng rolled his eyes, finding the situation laughable. Obviously, he would be a fool to believe their words that the punishment wouldn't be more severe. deceiving the guards and ransacking their sacred garden herbs. Each one of them was a huge offense. Bang! Another loud banging sound echoed throughout the garden, prompting Su Feng to be alerted. Fixing the position of his glasses, Su Feng understood the magnitude of the current situation. He had underestimated the guard's desire and anger of wanting to detain him. Despite the grim situation, Su Feng was rather calm now. Enough of the banging, okay? He'll open the door, but the banging just now has caused quite a rumble in the garden. He announced loudly, "As long as you know that you're in the wrong, quickly open the door and accept your punishment. I promise to be lenient if you cooperate." I want to open the door quickly too, but thanks to whoever was making the banging on the door, the scenery here is a mess. Lots of soil is scattered around with some of the herbs even being uprooted. If I don't tend to them now, then they'll lose their medicinal effect. Instantly, the atmosphere turned silent, almost as if the guards outside were thinking about what to do. As for Su Feng, he was naturally spouting nonsense. A sacred garden could easily be toppled over because of a few banging on the door? What kind of nonsense was that? The main point of speaking such stuff was to stall them. At the same time, it would make the guards pause for a moment. After all, they believed he was trapped in here, so there was no rush in arresting him. However, if the herbs became spoiled or had their medicinal effect diminished because of their unwillingness to let him tend to them, then the fault would be placed on the guard and not him. It was a wicked and shrewd lie that Su Feng made up on the spot. Not only was it extremely effective, but Su Feng could also take this time to rob the remaining 30% of the herbs. Previously, he needed to be cautious with his actions and refrain from disturbing the central herbs, which were in full view of the guards. But now that his personal facade had been exposed, there was no longer any need to be polite with them. To leave behind such precious herbs, despite having the opportunity to pocket them, would be a sin so grievous that it could curse him and his entire lineage for centuries. Bless the game for having easily fooled NPCs. Su Feng prayed sincerely as he swiftly cleaned up the entire herb garden. The harvest that he earned today could be quadrupled into real currency if he played his cards right. Just as he was joyfully celebrating in his mind, the banging on the door resumed, this time with a greater force than before. What? They weren't fooled? No, that's impossible. The guards clearly hesitated when I mentioned the possibility of herb destruction. Su Feng was stunned initially. He didn't understand what made the guards regain their composure to act so decisively. There must have been an unknown variable at play that caused his deception to fail. With the situation rapidly changing for the worst, Su Feng retreated to the far end of the wall, putting as much distance as possible between himself and the door. If only I'm not a cleric but a sorcerer right now, then I would have been able to delay them longer. He knitted his brows, realizing the flaw of being a cleric at such an early stage. As a level 1 cleric, there were limited abilities that could be utilized. He would have to level up in order to unlock the abilities that are useful. Currently, Su Feng's skill trees contain 5 abilities: Heal, Bless Protection, Blinding Strike, Blessing Valor, and Sacred Fire. Out of the 5, only one of them, Sacred Fire, actually deals damage to the opponent. Just when Su Feng finished buffing himself with supporting abilities, a loud boom echoed throughout the garden. Boom! The door broke open from the brute force of the guards, causing some debris of the door to scatter across. Immediately surrender now, or else you will die a painful death. Despicable liar. One of the guards brandished his spear, issuing a stern warning. Now that it comes to this, you all leave me with no choice. With a resigned sigh, Su Feng realized there was no avoiding confrontation. Instead of succumbing to panic, Su Feng calmly produced a sunfire lotus herb he had acquired earlier. Cradling the delicate herb in his left hand, he cast Sacred Fire. With a deft motion, the sacred fire flickered dangerously close to the herb, eliciting gasps from the guards. Do not push me further. I am but a cowardly and timid soul. Any sudden movements or shouts might result in this herb meeting an untimely demise. Su Feng's trembling voice carried a hint of fear, echoing through the tense atmosphere. The guards, observing Su Feng's nervous demeanor and the perilous proximity of the sacred fire to the herb, faltered in their resolve. Chapter 10. Removed following the subtle threat from Su Feng of destroying the herb, the guard could only stand in their position, unwilling to provoke him further from committing the act. The herbs were precious, and the culprit was in front of them, which meant that sooner or later he would be apprehended. However, if their actions caused the culprit to destroy the herbs altogether, then the losses would be tremendous. Therefore, they were stuck in a dilemma, unable to advance or retreat, with Su Feng leading the situation completely from start to finish. What a bunch of idiots indeed. If this was an upgraded version of the game, then this bluff of mine would be useless. Su Feng sneered inwardly. It was no exaggeration to say the guards weren't human-like and were just a bunch of robots at the moment. After all, the Sunfire Lotus herb in his hand currently had attributes, such as increasing fire resistance to a player. So what was his mere sacred fire going to do to the herb? Even if it did come into contact, the Sunfire Lotus would still be glistening with 0 damages. As if I would risk burning my wealth, Su Feng exclaimed inwardly. He was meticulous in everything and was long ready for the situation to change drastically. Despite not wanting the situation to come to this, there was no regret in his actions. No pain, no gain. That was a common phrase, but one that stood true no matter the situation. My hands are trembling with those spears pointing at me. Please, I'm very cowardly. Su Feng continued his act and proceeded to tease the guards further by making the sacred fire closer to the herb. His realistic actions prompted the guards to retreat a few steps, clearly afraid of him actually destroying the herbs. Look at these guards. Do they think I will destroy my own wealth? There is simply no chance of him ruining the herbs when he had spent so much effort into ransacking them. Once the guards retreated close to the entrance, Su Feng distanced the sacred fire from the herb and sighed in relief, continuing with his act. Go outside and let me cool down for a second. I can't even escape from here, so there's no harm in it, right? He then shouted, albeit in a somewhat panicked tone. His statement was quite logical, and there was indeed no other escape path other than the entrance door, which they were tightly guarding. Therefore, the guards nodded but gave a final warning. We'll only give you a few minutes to think of your actions. If you really destroy the herbs, then you'll never see the daylight in your lifetime again. Su Feng nodded his head in understanding, but silently, he was urging them to exit the garden. Just leave already. By the time you all stood outside, we'll be gone by then. I want to see how you'll threaten me afterward. Sometime later, the guards left the garden and actually closed the door. In their mind, Su Feng was like a trapped rabbit with no escape paths. Thus, they didn't mind closing the door. Luckily for Su Feng, and unfortunately for the guards, if they had known Su Feng was going to be kicked out very soon, then they would have risked it all to detain him on the spot. With the door closed, Su Feng finally breathed out a sigh of relief as he glanced at the time remaining. 1 minute. Although 1 minute seemed like a short time, to Su Feng's current situation, it was rather long. How did these guards realize my lie so quickly? The location from the Miracle Herb Garden to the baptismal altar is quite far. Just how did that guard manage to travel so fast? He knitted his brows, seemingly unable to comprehend this unusual variable. Even if the guard did suspect him and wanted to verify the information as soon as possible, it should have still taken the guard at least 15 minutes to arrive there. That time interval was the estimation that he had done to rob the herbs and be kicked out. However, the estimation was completely wrong, causing him to confront the guards and resort to deception to stall for time. Patiently waiting for the time to count down, Su Feng relaxed his muscles when the number hit 0. Finally, goodbye, guards, and thanks for your lovely herbs contribution. Su Feng laughed heartily as he eagerly waited to be kicked out of the holy sanctuary. Alas, his laughter came to an abrupt halt when he saw a system message pop up. System, due to adventurer Lin Feng's misconduct in the holy sanctuary and his misdeeds of ransacking the Miracle Herb Garden, punishment would be imposed upon him. What? Su Feng's mouth was wide open when he read the system message. It never occurred to him that the system of the divine world would be personally imposing a punishment upon him. This kind of process went against all logic and information he learned from his past. Never once had there been an incident of a system personally imposing a punishment on a player unless they were caught and detained by fellow NPCs. While in the midst of confusion, the system continued to send out a few messages. System: given that the arrival of adventurer Lin Feng here in the Holy Sanctuary was because he wanted to gain some experience and had obtained approval from the system. Therefore, adventurer Lin Feng falls under the administration and jurisdiction of the system. So I was under surveillance by the system due to this loophole. He face-bombed, clearly not expecting this kind of plot twist. Then what punishment would I face? Am I going to have my herbs confiscated or the baptism revoked? Su Feng asked in concern. Alas, there was no longer any response from the system as he was directly removed from the Holy Sanctuary. His vision blurred completely, and there was a sensation and feeling of him being tossed around like a rag doll, causing him to feel nauseous. Is this part of the punishment? He screeched, covering his mouth.